Ah, the wrestling sister! Scott's innocent voice echoed through the room. This was Walter's wedding venue. Mary is petite and clearly doesn't wrestle. Did you play wrestling with her? I asked, and Scott shook his head. Because she was on top of Grandpa the other day! The venue erupted into whispers at his words. Walter, myself, and a word from the boss made Cody and Mary realize the gravity of the situation. My name is Ruby. I'm 53. Grew up in a regular house in the countryside. Fell in love with my husband Cody when I was 20. We had a smooth relationship and discovered I was pregnant a few years later. Cody was only 20 at the time. However, he proposed, and here we are. Shotgun marriages were still frowned upon, and we were young with little income. Life wasn't easy then. I earned more and essentially supported Cody, which became neighborhood gossip. But we persevered despite the cold stares. Cody worked hard and climbed the ladder. We have 2 sons, Walter and Taylor. Taylor, like us, had a shotgun marriage 5 years ago. Though society isn't as harsh now, we understand the challenges. I work part-time and help out by watching Scott when I can. Amelia, a student then, has been Taylor's girlfriend for a while and often visited our home. She's a good girl, and I have no worries about Taylor's future. Meanwhile, Walter never seemed interested in romance. No rumors ever. Earlier this year, Cody, concerned, wanted to introduce Walter to a colleague's daughter. Walter was reluctant, but I was worried about him staying alone, so we agreed to meet her. One weekend, Cody left early to pick her up. I was preparing lunch, waiting. It was special for her to come to our house on the first meeting. A kind gesture. The doorbell rang just past noon. Walter, who had come down to the first floor, sighed slightly. "Walter, don't sigh," I chided. Okay, he responded. "It's someone from Cody's workplace, right? Even if it doesn't work out, don't be rude." Walter made a face at my reminder. I want him to marry, but I know it shouldn't be forced. I just want Walter to find happiness. "Nice to meet you. I'm Mary." The woman who entered with Cody was small and cute. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ruby, Cody's wife." "Cody always speaks highly of you. Thank you for coming today." I extended my hand, but she didn't shake it, and instead walked further into the house, saying, "Excuse my intrusion." Her attitude struck me as odd, but maybe that's just how young people are today. "Ah, were you cooking?" Cody asked, entering behind her and looking at the dining area. "Yes, I thought it was about lunchtime," I answered, puzzled by his question. "Oh, Cody and I already had pasta. Sorry," she said in a flirting tone. Cody? Would you normally call your boss by their first name? Despite a lingering sense of unease, I remembered what Cody had mentioned before. In our department, everyone is on friendly terms and we call each other by first names. It seems he said that. "Okay, I should have checked. My bad," I said, recalling his words and smiling. "Come on, Walter, introduce yourself." At my prompt, Walter stood up and greeted her. "Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Walter." "I'm Mary. You look just like Cody. Handsome." No, I mean." Walter seemed embarrassed, but not entirely displeased. Later, she and Walter chatted in the living room. "She's a nice girl, isn't she?" Cody smiled. It seemed like he wasn't bothered by the odd feelings I had, being with her for just a few hours today. "Yes, she is." What else could I have said in that situation? Later, Cody joined the conversation, and the 3 of them talked happily. Walter, who was initially reluctant, seemed to warm up to her friendliness. I convinced myself, if Walter is happy, then it's okay. That day, the 3 of them seemed to get along well, and ended up having dinner together. I was the only one preparing sushi, cooking, and shopping, but she didn't pay any attention. She didn't have to help, but the way she kept touching Walter and Cody, laughing loudly, made me uncomfortable. Though I intended to welcome her, I didn't like the idea of this new woman taking Walter away. With these thoughts, I continued preparing everything alone. I recalled how, when Amelia first visited our house, still a minor, she brought a cake and asked if she could help wash the dishes. I shouldn't compare, but the memory made me sigh. I wish for someone with that kind of consideration, I thought. watching the three of them laugh together from my isolated spot in the kitchen. But contrary to my thoughts, things progressed quickly. According to Walter, I don't like her in that way, but she's a nice girl, and maybe I'll come to like her. I was taken aback by such casual thoughts about marriage, but I was the one who encouraged it. I had no right to say anything. Cody really liked her, and Walter seemed to think the same. Eventually, they got engaged within 6 months of their first meeting. Walter and his wife offered to live with us. What a nice daughter-in-law to suggest living together in these times. Mary was well regarded by the neighbors. With a forced smile, I started our life together as a family of 4. Mary continued working, leaving and returning with Cody. They often came back late, so she didn't have time for housework. Apart from my part-time job, I was exhausted from the added chores. No, it was not physical tiredness, probably mental. Ruby, Mary would have preferred meat today. They would criticize the menu, or, we have a meeting today, so Cody and I will eat out, including Cody in their plans. It's good that they're close. However, I'm sure she's having Cody treat her to fancy meals. Mary, we need to save for the wedding, I would say, only for Cody to reprimand me. Mary is still new to our home and is trying to adjust. It's okay to dine out with her occasionally. Besides, I'm the one paying, so she's not spending any money. Cody reprimanded me. Despite my displeasure with this, Cody didn't seem to notice. We haven't dined out in a while. Why do you always have to go with Mary? Walter can take her, I argued, but Cody just laughed it off. His defense of her and Mary's occasional behavior bothered me, but I couldn't help feeling negative. I knew I was being petty, but I hoped Mary would realize it eventually. They had kindly offered to live with us. I really want to get along well with them. These feelings are genuine. Months later, the wedding day arrived. Cody and I prepared early. It was a homely party at Walter's request, and we greeted guests with the newlyweds. Many guests were common acquaintances since Cody and Mary worked together. Mary stood next to Cody, and Walter and I greeted the relatives. I'm truly grateful to the chief director for introducing me to such a wonderful person, Mary said humbly, referring to Cody by his title, though she usually used his first name. I wondered if she had a dual personality, but it was a joyous occasion. I stopped overthinking. Matilda, long time no see. Mary's mother, Matilda, greeted us. Mary's family lived far away. She was born to an older mother and raised by her single mother, a hard-working woman. She seemed strict but was delighted with Walter and Mary's marriage, even giving me gifts. Raised by Matilda, I couldn't give up hope that Mary would change. It was hard for the elderly woman to welcome guests. She had been contacted to arrive on time with her brother, and it seemed they had just arrived. It's us who should apologize for not being able to help, Matilda said, bowing her head. Not at all, I replied. Is Mary causing any trouble? She asked. I paused for a moment, but then smiled. She's working hard, and recently she and Cody even looked after our grandson, Scott. She's really become part of the family. Matilda seemed relieved by my words. Taylor and his wife also came. Our grandson Scott is now 4 years old. He seemed excited by the unusual atmosphere today, apparently having been overly energetic at home. By the time he arrived, he was sound asleep. Oh dear. I chuckled at his sleeping face. I was convinced that today would be a happy day with everyone here. The wedding began. The MC guided the event, but it was lively and informal. Mary and Cody were mingling with their colleagues, introducing Walter. Holding the still sleeping Scott, I told Taylor and his wife, "Eat while Scott is asleep." I was fussing over Taylor and his wife, telling them to eat while Scott was asleep. But holding Scott, I noticed Amelia being considerate. After encouraging them to eat at their leisure, I headed towards where Cody and the others were, still carrying Scott. I'm a good daughter-in-law, right? I could hear Mary saying this to a colleague, as if wearing a mask, even from a distance. Then she leaned in to look at Cody's face, seeking confirmation. She really is a wonderful daughter-in-law. I'm so happy that Walter has found such a great daughter-in-law. I felt a twinge of irritation at Cody's words, but inserted myself into the conversation. Hello, thank you for being here today. I'm Cody's wife, Ruby. When I greeted the colleagues, Cody introduced me to them as well. I received congratulations from the colleagues and thanked them with a smile. However, Mary, who heard Cody introducing me, seemed to sour her expression for some reason. Was she annoyed at not being the center of attention? I get along so well with my in-laws. Everyone in the neighborhood says I'm a good daughter-in-law. Right, Ruby? Mary said, turning to me. In the midst of this, she wrapped her arm around Cody's. Wait a minute. Even Cody seemed perplexed by this. Then she took Walter's arm with her other hand, as if claiming both men from me. Her triumphant look seemed to mock me. Then I heard a sweet voice. Grandma? Awake already? I asked. Yeah. It seems Scott finally woke up. Rubbing his eyes, still sleepy, he looked around. Trying to hide my agitation, I said, Cody, Scott's awake. And just then, Ah, the wrestling sister! Scott said, pointing at Mary with a happy smile. Wrestling? Mary? The colleagues around us started laughing. Hey, don't say such things. I scolded Scott. I didn't know what he was thinking, but Mary's face seemed to stiffen. Did she play wrestling with you the other day? I said, laughing it off. Scott shook his head. Because she was on top of Grandpa before. His words echoed among the colleagues. What? I muttered in surprise. Seeing Cody and Mary turn pale, I was at a loss for words. What? Mary was on top of Dad? Walter spoke up in my stead. His questions stirred the venue into commotion. The laughter and smiles of the colleagues disappeared. Walter's voice must have been loud. It attracted everyone's attention. What do you mean by that? Walter shouted. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Mary, still pale, forced a smile and said to Walter, When I asked him what he was doing, he said they were playing wrestling. Scott said, puzzled. On the bed? Walter asked Scott. Yeah. Walter spoke again, hesitantly asking, Were you wearing clothes? Scott shook his head in response, meaning they were not clothed. I felt drained. I almost collapsed. Holding Scott tightly to prevent dropping him, my legs wobbled. A colleague offered me a chair in response. No, it's just a 4-year-old speaking. Don't take it seriously. Cody laughed, but I could see sweat on his face. What do you mean? Did you get involved with a subordinate? And even your son's wife? The boss, who had arrived first and had been greeted by Cody and Mary, questioned. No, I didn't. Cody protested, but the boss looked stern. I'm not at fault. He forced himself on me. Mary pretended to cry, unconvincingly. I couldn't forgive Cody or Mary's behavior. I accused, Did you marry Walter just to live with Cody? Cody and Mary both looked at me. Hey, don't say such things! Don't believe it! Cody said hastily, trying to excuse himself. I've been suspecting something strange. If you planned this from the beginning, then your behavior towards me makes sense. I said, outraged. However, Mary, acting like an actress, shed tears and shook her head. Ruby, that's terrible! Who's really terrible here? Both of you! Get out of the house! Walter defended me. You're not wanted at the company either. We don't need people who disrupt the order. The boss added. The two finally seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Mary, still pale, wailed, while Cody tried to ingratiate himself with me and the boss. The wedding ended in the worst atmosphere. I kept bowing to the departing guests, but everyone was kind, saying, It's not Ruby's fault. Don't push yourself. Their words were a small comfort amid the misfortune. The wedding was over, but the battle for me and Walter was just beginning. Taylor had a detailed conversation with Scott, and together, with Walter's words, the story became clear. Recently, when Taylor and his wife were out, we were looking after Scott. I was at my part-time job, and Cody and Walter's wife were supposed to watch him. It was not unusual for us to take care of Scott like this, so taking care of Scott in itself wasn't unusual. But on that day, while Scott was napping, Mary apparently expressed a desire to eat steak from a steakhouse in the neighboring town. Then shall we all go when Mom returns? Walter suggested, but Cody said, Ruby will be tired, so let's buy it and eat at home. Let's prepare for Taylor and his family too. Thinking Scott was asleep, Walter left alone. When Scott woke up from his nap, he peeked into the bedroom upon hearing Cody's voice. What followed was as everyone guessed. Scott witnessed them, and they made up a ridiculous excuse of playing wrestling, even telling him not to tell anyone. At the wedding, Scott, still half asleep, had forgotten about the promise. Walter, Taylor, and I confronted Cody and Mary with this information. "It was against my will," Mary kept saying. "So should we go to the police?" Walter's suggestion silenced Mary, her face turning pale. "Ruby, haven't we always overcome everything together?" Cody pleaded with me. It seemed he didn't want a divorce. "Yes, that's why I never expected to be betrayed like this," I retorted. "I just gave in to impulse." Cody kept his head down, but Mary seemed displeased with his words. "Wait, what? Gave in to impulse? Weren't you the one who said to marry Walter because you wanted to live together but couldn't divorce?" Mary burst out angrily. Her words were inconsistent, sometimes denying, sometimes affirming. They seemed to have reached their limit with lies. The more they talked, the less their stories aligned. My sons and I sighed heavily at them. Seeing us, Cody and Mary bowed their heads again. It was truly pathetic. Was this the Cody I knew? I felt like crying. "Anyway, pack your things and leave," I said. "Ruby! Ruby!" Both of their voices overlapped. "Don't call me by my name!" Even hearing my name from them was nauseating. "For the divorce settlement, Mary owes me $20K, Cody owes me $10K, and Cody owes Walter $20K. Mary owes Walter $10K. A total of $60,000. I will make sure to claim it." They turned pale. Their hands trembled as if frozen. "That's not enough for what Scott saw. Demand compensation for him too, Taylor." Walter spoke to Taylor. "Yeah, the hurt Scott has can't really be compensated with money. Don't forget that." Taylor added. Cody bit his lip deeply. There might still be some awareness in him of being a grandpa, but even that awareness, just for today. "Also, the mortgage of this house is mine. The ownership is mine. I have no obligation to let you stay, so this isn't a joke." They must have realized our seriousness. Despite my irritation at their silence, we must have inflicted at least half the damage we suffered. Walter and I looked at each other and laughed at the ridiculousness of the two. Eventually, the incident spread throughout the company, and they were forced to resign. Their severance pay, being joint property, was properly divided in the divorce. They had to borrow from relatives to pay the settlement. Everyone at the wedding was disgusted with Cody. I wondered if anyone would lend him money. Mary received an apology and payment from Matilda. Matilda, though deeply distressed and elderly, came to apologize, and I couldn't say anything against her kindness. Though she paid, it seemed she was cutting ties with Mary. There was a request to return to her parents' home because she lost her job, but she was told, "I don't know a child like you," and was dismissed. She is an adult now. She should take responsibility for herself and live her life properly. And as expected, the relationship between Cody and Mary didn't work out. They broke up. I heard rumors they were bad-mouthing each other, but I truly didn't care. Then, the life of just Walter and me began. It's a stress-free, happy, everyday life. "Wonder if I should get married," Walter mused. "Do whatever you like," I said, laughing it off. Walter was hurt by marriage. I couldn't push him towards another one. However, years later, Walter said he had something to tell me. "I found someone I want to marry." I can't express how happy I was to hear that. The girl he introduced was a junior colleague at his company. What happens next is uncertain, but Walter and I still have so much ahead. Life is long. I believe there's always a path to happiness.